Practically nothing I say today is original. Principles and approaches that I'm going to outline for you have been around for a long time, and they're easily available from books or from observing people around you who are leaders. And any of you who care to can go to the books and watch the people and pick them up. They're all basic principles, and you can translate them into action. And of course, there are talents or attributes as being part of a good leader that they may be born with. And those talents make it easier for some people, probably for all people in one way or another, to develop leadership attributes in some categories. And maybe it's easier in some ways than others. And you and I may have negatives that you're born with, that it's difficult to get over and to pick up the leadership attributes to get around them. But every one of the leadership talents or attributes, whether good or bad, can be augmented or mitigated by the skills in leadership that you learn and put to use. Every leadership principle can be improved upon by use. So whatever you're born with or you aren't born with, you can make it better. Maybe you can't, maybe if you're a baseball player, you got eyes that can see that ball coming to you better than others, and you can get a little better at it, but maybe you can't be Ted Williams. But with leadership, you can pick up the principles. Abraham Lincoln may have looked like an ape, gangly, not very attractive human being, and he was called an ape. You can find cartoons that picture him as an ape. He may have had a high, squeaky voice, but everybody today recognizes that he was a great leader, and his leadership skills were monumental, and he developed those skills. One of the most moving examples of that happened to me, probably 10 years ago, Connie and I went to see a prairie, a reconstructed prairie in southern Indiana, and down there we saw that the land that Lincoln had grown up on from age 6 or something to 19 was close by, so we went over there, and they had a big museum and all sorts of things, and we went to that, and it was late in the day, and they set out in the woods, they had the remains of the cabin he'd grown up in it. It was late, and I really wasn't very much interested in looking at the remains of a cabin, but Connie urged me, my wife, to go see it, and we went out there. And they had the ruins of the cabin, and then they had a model reconstructed. And I stood there in the reconstructed model and looked at the ruins of the cabin, and I don't remember the exact dimensions, but I can tell you, if you start at that wall and come over to about where I am and go back to this wall, that's about the size of it. I mean, it's tiny. And in the cabin is a fireplace on this wall, and a double bed, which was the double bed that size, and a table where everybody ate. So you had his parents had a place to sleep, you had a table where they ate, you had the fireplace, and that about took up the cabin. And upstairs there was a loft where the 3 kids slept. And I stood there and looked at that cabin, and all I could think of was the Lincoln Memorial. All I could see is Abraham Lincoln sitting on that big chair of marble looking down the mall, and all I could think of was from here to there. How did that happen? And that's my example for you today. You can learn, you can pick up leadership talents. You can learn to be a leader, and everybody recognizes he was one of the best, and that's where he started, in that little cabin. So let's talk about some of the things you need to do if you want to be a leader. First, you have to know who you are and what you want to achieve. Knowing who you are is essentially knowing and molding your own character. Who are you and what do you want to be? Stephen Covey, who wrote the famous and very readable treatise that's been on the bestseller list for, I think, 10 years, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, starts there. Begin with the end in mind. That's the principle. Start knowing your goal. Let me quote, "The most effective way I know to begin with the end in mind is to develop a personal mission statement, a philosophy or creed that focuses on what you want to be, what you want your character to be, and what you want to do, what your contributions and our achievements are, and the values and principles that those are based on." So first, what do you want to be? What's your mission? Who are you? What do you like? What don't you like? I'm sure, I know what you want to be sounds pretty intimidating, and when I use the word mission statement, that sounds pretty intimidating, but you think about it. You spend a lot of time thinking about who you are, and you can refine that and develop it and figure out what you want to be. Do you want to be a friend? Do you want to be a follower in most things? Or do you want to be a leader in everything? Do you want to be tactful? Are you willing to bend? Do you like to bend? What are your instincts? What's your mission? You need to understand all of these things. A good example is, are you a risk taker? Some people just love to gamble. They love it. They get their kicks out of it. There's nothing wrong with gambling if you can afford it, or you can, if money's involved, or gambling in anything. If you can live with it, if you like to do it, you can gamble in anything if you can live with the results. But if that's a beautiful example of saying your need is to understand yourself. If you're a risk taker and you want to be a leader, then you need to understand that maybe you're willing to take more risks than the people around you. And if you're going to lead them, you have to understand what the limits are to your gamble and your risk taking. And maybe you have to modify what you do yourself. So you have to understand yourself and know who you are and what you want to be and how that plays into everything you're going to lead. Secondly, you have to know what you want to achieve. You have to have some goals. If you want to be a leader, you can't just thrash around living from day to day. You have to know what you want to achieve, and that goes for anything. If you don't want to be the president, or if you do, if you want to be the governor, or you want to be a leader in anything you want to do. As a student, what do you want to achieve? Who am I first, and how do I work? And secondly, what do I want to achieve? Do I want an A in that history course? And if so, if that's my goal, then I have to go get it. Then I have to go after it, and I have to mold what I do to what I want to achieve. One instance that I love to use with leadership that I think some people don't think about, and my guess is that that's another issue, but my guess is that young people don't, at your age, think about. But there's a leadership role that most of you will probably have, and that's as a parent. That's a big-time leadership role, and that's a big-time leadership role. And you have to begin with the end in mind. What do you want for your kids? What do you want them to be? Because you're going to have a lot to do with it. You're going to lead them for a number of years. What is your